Welcome everyone to the Central Church podcast. My name is Brooke, and here with me I have Kelly Blackwell and Sabrina Miller. Both of you lead community groups along with your husbands and serve and lead our church body in so many ways. And so just thank you for all that you guys do. And I think both of you would say, as many of us would right now, that our lives seem to have been turned completely upside down in this season. Our days simply don't look the same. For most of us, at least in some way, our work has changed too. What we're doing and how we're doing it, or the challenges associated with our work, all kind of have taken on different levels right now. And today that's what we want to speak on, work. It is a little different right now, but ultimately the goal we seek to accomplish through our work is still the same for us that follow Jesus. Who we are working for matters, and as believers, ultimately, we aren't working for our bosses or even ourselves. We are working for the Lord. I think of Colossians 3:23 and 24. It says, "Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for human masters, since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward." It kind of makes it pretty clear to us that we're working for Him. Both of you have had many new challenges as you try to navigate this very unknown season with regards to your working situation. So Kelly, could you just kind of speak into what you do? You are a speech therapist, which obviously is not typically a virtual career, but right now you're working from home while also having two little ones in the house. So can you just share some of the challenges associated with that right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So like you said, I'm a speech therapist. I work at a local company. Typically, I work with the pediatric population, so birth to 5 and some school-age kiddos. This is typically done either in the clinic or I sometimes travel to schools and local childcare centers as well. So definitely usually done face-to-face with the kiddos. And of course, with COVID-19 and the social distancing, that's changed a lot of things as far as how I deliver therapy services. So I've been currently using the telepractice or teletherapy model for the past few weeks, which has a learning curve to it. So definitely still figuring everything out. It's had its challenges for sure. And then again, also my kiddos and families who are also in the same positions, either, working from home or maybe not working at all right now or being essential workers. So just everybody's schedules are kind of changed. My two kiddos who typically attend the local schools, they're now doing remote learning from home. So we're doing that too. And then my husband's also working from home. So we're just trying to find like a good balance for all of us, new schedules, and just trying to establish a new rhythm altogether.
Definitely. I don't think you're alone in that, probably.
Right.
Speaking of, Sabrina, you actually work in the healthcare field, which of course has very real dangers and difficulties right now. Could you just first tell us what you do and maybe speak into how the mood might have shifted for you and your coworkers right now with everything going on?
Absolutely. So I work in the emergency department. I work in the behavioral health unit, and what I do there is I'm a behavioral health specialist, and we deal with people who come in emergency crisis. We also go throughout the entire hospital to the different floors and just touch base with people who may be there for months on end. Sometimes it can be weeks, sometimes it can be months that they're there, that they're just dealing with lots of different issues, whether it's medical, whether it's, crisis situations. Sometimes people are there because we can't find placements, so they're there for a long extended period of time. We just basically go in for some emotional support. Some of these people have families, some of them do not. So it's really nice to be able to utilize that and be able to help these people with that emotionally and just being there for them, to just care for them with whatever we can do to help.
Definitely. Awesome. Um, and obviously, there's so much anxiety and fear and unknowns around working, whether it's an essential worker on the front lines or if you're working from home and having to adjust to very different methods of work and a very different schedule. So, how do we shift our perspective as believers in the midst of natural anxiety and hard work? We have to consciously change how we view our work. We have to choose to dedicate whatever we do to the Lord to find a greater purpose in what we do, and the ability to do it in an attitude of peace and love. I think of Proverbs 16:3. It says, "Commit to the Lord whatever you do, and He will establish your plans." I think it's an important component of this shift to viewing our work to be done for God is humble surrender. We need to just surrender over our control of our plans to God and allow Him to use for His glory whatever we do, day by day and moment by moment. It's this re-giving ourselves to God and submission of our situations to God. Knowing that He is in control and we are not, which is a little difficult for a lot of us. Kelly, what are some of the struggles of giving up control and letting God use your dedicated work for you? And just at the same time, how can it bring peace?
Yeah. So I am definitely one of those people that get comfortable in my routine and my own plans. And I do have a difficult time when changes come my way. It's something that I really have to practice. As far as, like you said, Brooke, the humble surrender goes. I love to have a plan. I like to plan meals. I like to plan how I parent, how my day goes. And sometimes it's hard to make those shifts for me. And I know you just read from Proverbs, and I actually pulled a verse from there as well. Proverbs 16:9, a person's heart plans his way, but the Lord determines his steps. And just that's what it is for me. I just have to practice letting go of that control that I love to have so much sometimes, and just practice that surrendering. And it really is an act of trust when I give something over to God in dependence of Him and nothing else. The Bible tells us that we're going to have difficult times come our way. But it does help so much if you can establish that peace and know that God's working for His ultimate good and for ours too. It can bring a lot of peace in those situations. So that's something that's really helped me. It does take practice for me, but it helps to bring that peace, definitely.
Yeah, well said. And, ultimately, God is in control. He's moving through the work of our hands, whatever that might be. If that's providing therapy or helping to care for the sick or homeschooling or grocery workers, it doesn't matter what we do. He wants to use it for His glory. And He gives us a greater purpose for it all, too. So, Sabrina, how have you seen God moving through you and your work?
For me, I think it's more along the lines of anxiety and fear, where I do go into the work environment. It took a lot for me to continue doing what I do. There was a lot of talk behind whether or not maybe I'd take a break from that. But I think for me, it's really come down to just focusing on God and focusing on what He can do for me in regards to the peace that He provides. One of the verses that I actually looked into for this was Psalm 46:1. It says, "God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble." So I've taken a lot of the anxiety and a lot of the fear that I struggle with on a day-to-day basis in regards to just going in and out of work, coming home to my kiddos and my husband, and I've taken a lot of that and I've used it in a different way. One of the ways that I do is I walk up and down the hallways. It sounds kind of silly, but I walk up and down the hallways of the emergency room. And when I do go to the inpatient units, I do it there as well. But I'm just praying as I'm walking for the people that I'm coming into contact with and the people that I'm not able to come into contact with because of certain things. So I'm hopefully, using that as an example to just reach people, as well as, just meeting people where they're at. There's a lot of emotions during this time, a lot of people just with the unfamiliarity of all of this and just not knowing what's coming. We all experience different things, and different emotions. So I want to be able to be there for people, to just help them through, whenever I can. So
Yeah, I think those are definitely ways that God is moving through you in your work.
mm,
And I think of Psalm 23:4, which really kind of speaks into what you were just talking about too. It says, if God is with you, you do not need to fear the future. When you wake up and when we start our days, whether that's beginning a day at home with our kids or working from home alone or heading into your workplace, or some combination of all of those, Jesus gives us peace and love. And that is the only way that we can complete our work in a peaceful and non-anxious state, is only through him. I think of the story of Mary and Martha. If you're familiar with the story, you know that Martha was a doer. She was working and working and getting frustrated with Mary, actually, because she was just sitting with Jesus. Um, but actually, it's that sitting with Jesus that we all need to do, that spending time with him, that is the only way that we're going to be able to cope with all of the fear and anxiety surrounded with our work right now, is if we take the time to be with Jesus. And I'll just read that story for us really quick, in Luke 10:38 through 42. It says, as Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. She had a sister called Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet, listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all of the preparations she had to make. She came to him and said, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her to help me. But the Lord answered, Martha, Martha, you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. Jesus makes it pretty clear to us that he wants us to be with him, and that replaces that anxiety and fear as we're trying to do all of this work, and we can't do it without him. So like Mary and like Martha learned, the only way we were able to complete the work set before us with peace and love is to do it with the help of Jesus. So I have a question for both of you. How are you actively and intentionally spending time with Jesus and reflecting him throughout the day? Anything practical that you're doing?
So for me, I love this story. I've actually studied it many times. I think that if we're not careful and intentional, we can become a lot like Martha sometimes. Especially right now, there's so many distractions, either on social media or even just the news updates. It's so easy to get distracted. So it's so important to be intentional with our time right now and spend time with Jesus. There's a saying, a friend of ours usually says, and she says that it's so important to be able to work from our rest instead of rest from our work. And I often think about that, that in order for me to be intentional and to minister to others, even within my own home, my children, it's really important for me to take that time. So right now, where we're all home together, quite often that means doing it together a lot of times, which has been really special. So if something's on our heart or a need comes up, we'll just stop and pray all together. My kiddos will pray too. If I'm reading my Bible, they'll read their Bibles. So it's been a really special time for us. Something that's been really nice is the food program that Central Church is now doing. We've been kind of serving together as a family in that way. So the kiddos are putting on gloves and helping to package the food, and they'll ride in the car while we make deliveries. So just trying to serve other people during this time. I'm just really prayerful that my kiddos will look back at this time, and instead of it being a time always filled with fear and anxiety, that they'll remember how we served other people and spent time with Jesus. So that's kind of some of the ways that we've been spending the time and making sure that Jesus is at the center.
What about you, Sabrina?
Yeah, so for me, I have to say that I have actually started to do the food delivery program that the church has put on. It's been amazing. I've done one so far, but I'm hoping to get to do more as time goes on. And I just, one of the things that I just want to speak upon, and a verse that's really been strong for me, is Proverbs 3:5-6. It says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your paths straight." And I think for me, where I do struggle with a lot of anxiety and just with the unknown, it's really important to make sure that we're putting others first. And, in a society where we work, and we live with the thought of not, speaking to people that we don't really know well, I think it's important that we change that and we actually do focus on others and do recognize, that others may be struggling in ways that we are not. So I think it's important to just constantly be in prayer, constantly be taking time to read our Bibles and just make sure that that's, a priority that we live day to day, and engaging with our family in ways that, we weren't before, where it was so chaotic and hectic. We live a life of just a go scenario. So I think it's important to just pause and take that time to just reflect on what is important during this time.
Definitely. Would you guys say that you notice a difference in your level of anxieties and fear during your work times when you don't do these things?
Definitely, I would. I think that without this time, it's really hard for me to be intentional with other people. And like Sabrina said, to put others first and just have that spirit of patience and love with everybody. And so for me, it's really important to take that time for myself and to be spending time with Jesus before I do my work, either speech therapy using telepractice or here at home as wife and mom. So definitely.
Awesome.
Absolutely. I would have to agree with you, Kelly.
Well, life and work are hard, not just right now, but maybe more so right now. And I think that's why it's even more important that we just very consciously dedicate all that we do to the Lord, and he will use it to bring him glory, even when it is difficult.
Absolutely.
I think both of you ladies are really trying to do that, and that doesn't mean you're perfect and you never have anxieties or fear, but it's something that we all need to strive for. It's to constantly rededicate what we do to the Lord and do it to the best of our abilities, because we're working for him and not man.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you both so much for joining us. And before we wrap up, I just would like to take a moment to close us out in prayer. God, we just thank you for giving us work. We know that it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing that you've put before us. And I pray that we would all, no matter what we're doing or where we're doing it, that we would be able to do it for your glory. Help us to just be very intentional, and help us to just to be with you, to get your peace and your love, and let that fuel us to do your work, Father. Equip us in a way that only you can. In your name I pray. Amen.
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 Well, thank you guys again, and thank you all for listening, and you can tune in for another episode next week.